we are glowing. We are looking at ways that we can glow. No one lights a lamp or hides it or puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on its stand where it can be seen by all who enter into the house. We are at a space that we want to just show what it is that we do, why we do what we do, and what we are going and what we're headed towards. So it's a way that we can get our values out and talk about our values. And this week's value is the art of welcome. The art of welcome is how you can be welcoming in a certain space, in a certain place and time, and how you can bring the presence of Jesus into that moment. When we talk about welcome, we often talk about the gift of hospitality. Now, it's clear that some people have the gift of hospitality and other people don't have the gift of hospitality. Many times at this church we've talked about, go for lunch after with somebody, go for dinner with somebody, all those type of things. But sometimes that's just not either in the cards or that's just not how you operate, and that's okay. What we're talking about hospitality is more than welcoming into your space, but bringing others into a safe space where they are at, not where you want them to be. These spaces are not hurried. They're not soapboxes where you stand up and you proclaim every single thing that you've ever learned from the Bible, from the story of Zacchaeus. You don't go in there and you tell everybody absolutely everything. You enter them into conversations. You invite them into a space where they can ask questions or you ask questions of them. Hospitality is a space where the peace of Christ is welcome. No matter where the conversations go, if they go the way you want them to go or the way that they want them to go, that is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is that people and all parties know that the peace of Jesus is there. The agenda is Jesus, but not in a way that we think we need to tell them always about Jesus. The agenda is Jesus because the agenda of Jesus is peace and reconciliation. In every conversation, you just bring that spirit into it. So today we're talking about that. What does it mean to bring the presence of Jesus into a conversation? We are on a rescue mission, and we are looking at the rescue mission of Jesus. Now, in full disclosure, Brian Zond preached a sermon through the story of Zacchaeus, and I really loved the way that he brought the illustration to life and how he spoke through this story. So a little bit of that is taken from my friend Brian Zond. So we are on a rescue mission. Jesus is on a rescue mission. It says here, Luke chapter 19, verse 10, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. This is Jesus is God's Father, Son, Holy Spirit. This is their mission to seek and save the lost. This is their mission statement from beginning to end, all the way through to the very, very end. Jesus continued to carry on with his mission statement. How many of us at the end of our lives will have a mission statement? We'll have something on our tombstone if we go that way, whatever. We'll have a mission statement, say, this person did this really well. Maybe we would have that if we're fortunate enough, we would have some kind of, this person's life was X, Y, Z. It was pretty clear. But we can't say that we did that from the very beginning to the very end. But Jesus knew about his mission all the way from the beginning, from the end. The very end of this passage says, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. Jesus didn't come to condemn sinners. He came to seek and save people that are lost. People get lost in mountains all the time. You see this mountain here. People get lost in mountains all the time. They get lost on the coast all the time. That's why we have a coast guard. That's why we have a rescue team. We don't ask ourselves as they're off lost, we're like, did they not bring a compass? If they didn't bring a compass, we're just going to leave them for an extra day or two. I think we're just going to not. Because people get themselves into sticky situations all the time. You know, if they're on the coast, if they're off in a fishing boat and they didn't bring enough gas, we're like, that's on them. Let's just kind of leave them out there. No, we of course, the Coast Guard is there to serve. You ask questions later, but you go and you seek and save the lost immediately. We don't ask questions. Just the exact same. We have found ourselves in sticky situations our whole existence as humanity. And sometimes we get there on accident. Sometimes we get there clearly by the choices that we make. Jesus doesn't ask the questions of how did you get into the place that you're at. He says, I am here to seek and save the lost. Today's story is about such a rescue mission where somebody may not have deserved the seeking and the saving, but that is his mission, and he continues his mission up until the very end. You see, Jesus was on his way. He entered in Jericho, and he's passing through it. And his popularity and his polarity have hit an all-time high. There is an absolute buzz about who Jesus is. Within 24 hours, he's going to be entering into Jerusalem to be waved on by the same crowds taking him in with the palm branches, and they're going to be laying down the palm branches underneath the colt. And then a week later, some of these people will still also cry, "Crucify him." There is as much a crescendo of the public ministry of Jesus in this moment than we will ever see. But one more time, a number of more times, but even on his way into the city, he's going to enact what he came to do. He's going to take his presence and bring the presence of God to seek and save the lost. See, these aren't just stories that we read throughout the Gospels. These aren't just nice stories for us to look at and be like, "Oh, that's nice." These are stories for us to then go and enact. When we are facing stresses, when we are up and at our very worst, we continue to love. Like the other day, Halloween. It's 9 o'clock. Teenager comes to my door. All right. It's my fault for having my light still on, and I was a little bit short. I was like, "Okay, here you go." And I gave him the plain chips. Side story. I apologize. Very cute. The kids all came home. We had about 15 kids in it. Eli had his 4 or 5 friends. Emily had 4 or 5 friends. Sale had 4 or 5 friends. Everybody was at our house. It was very exciting. But everybody was coming to our house for candy. Of course, that's what they do. Friday night, we ran out of candy. I said, "Okay, kids, we need to take up an offering." I need you all to give up candy. It was very interesting. Some kids were like, "Okay, I'll pick out the worst candy that I can find." Other kids were like, "I found a candy on the floor. Here's your offering." One kid, Leo, lovely kid, he gave a full bar. And full bars are very, very few and far between when they're hunting candy. And so he grabbed his full bar and he put it in the basket. I was like, "Oh, that was so nice of him." I may have found out later that he doesn't like Snickers, and but it was such a lovely moment. I thought this is a picture of the church, some people picking up the floor and some people giving everything. That was my side note. But there are stories when we are at our very best and at our very worst. And when we are at our very worst and people come in 9 o'clock at night asking for candy, maybe I should have been a little bit more blessing and I should have given more. I should have been more excited. But I was like a little bit short. I felt bad because I turned off the light right when he left. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that was bad." But Jesus, at his very end, at this very end space, he was enacting the kingdom. About 24 kilometers into Jerusalem, he still had that to go the next day. People had heard about Jesus and they were desperate to get a glimpse of what they were hearing about. What does this man even look like? What can he do? What kind of magic tricks can he do? What can he do for me? How can he heal me and my family? Or perhaps I heard that he is the Son of God and maybe I can get in on this kingdom now. Can you imagine the most powerful and influential person walking through town? And at this moment as well, there is no room at the inn either. There is no place for him to stay. And so one of the people in the crowd could be chosen to be a part of that story. There's a man named Zacchaeus. There's a few descriptors of Zacchaeus in this story. We know one of them. But he was a chief tax collector, and he was very rich. Zacchaeus was not just a tax collector. He was the chief tax collector. He was not just a tax collector. He was not just one of those phone calls you ignore when you know you haven't paid your credit card bills for a while, and you're like, if I get to the end of it, maybe I can pay half of my debt off and it'll be fine. No, he's not that phone call. He is the chief tax collector. He is the John Gotti of tax collectors. He is the top of the gangster chain. He's actually a collaborator with the Romans who have been expelled from the synagogue. He is not even allowed to go into the temple. He's not allowed to go into the synagogue. He is not allowed to be there because he is the chief. He is the absolute worst of the worst. But he has something that not everybody else has. He has curiosity. He's interested. He's like, I know who I am, but I'm also curious. That's all we need to do when we bring the presence of Jesus into a space. We just need to pique their curiosity. Oh, I go to church on Sunday. Maybe that'll pique some curiosity. Oh, that person was really patient with me. Maybe that'll pique some curiosity. Zacchaeus was curious. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd and the fact that he was a bit shorter, a lot shorter, he couldn't see. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in the sycamore tree, the Savior for to see. You guys know that song, do you? It sounds like a rhyme. I'm not going to sing it. I have no idea. Can you sing it for me? No. And he said, the Savior, come down. Oh, go on. You got it all, Laura. As the Savior passed by, he looked up at the tree. But he really wasn't as timid as this song might say. He was like John Gotti. Perhaps like, if you want to use a visual, maybe Danny DeVito in a gangster movie. That's kind of the visual that you might have about who he is. But there were crowds. He couldn't get there because there was a crowd that was pushing in. The crowds are interesting. The crowd is untruth, Soren Kierkegaard says. What does this mean about the crowd is untruth? Especially in ethical and spiritual matters, crowds can push their way. Crowds can push their sides. In politics, we have one side or the left or the right. They have two different sides, and the crowds and the extreme sides push the narrative. Crowds push their way. Crowds push what they want, not what they are going to see, not who Jesus is. The crowd is pushing their way. The crowd is trying to get close because Jesus is the new king, the son of David, the one that is going to seek and save the lost, but the one that they're going to do their bidding, not what Jesus' bidding is. So they want him to do something. The crowd would have not wanted Jesus to spend some time with someone so detestable that they had thrown out of the temple. So he was short in stature, and he ran ahead, and he climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he's going to pass by that way. The crowd was pushing in. There's no way to see. So this wee little mob boss man, he ran up. He knew where he was going. He climbed up a tree. And he was headed that way. He throws caution to the wind, and he climbs a tree. He gets up to the top just so he can get a glimpse of who this Jesus is. And then when Jesus came, he stops. He looks up the tree and he says, "You're Zacchaeus, right? That's you. Are you Zacchaeus? Never met before. Why don't you come down here, and I'm going to come over to your place tonight." The people stop. The crowd stop. Everyone stops and looks. And they're like, "You want to spend the night with him? We are all here. We are all on your side. We are all a part of the crowd. We are here for you, and you want to spend the day and the night with him?" The crowd stops, look up at Danny DeVito in the tree, and he comes down and he says, "Absolutely." So he hurried down and he welcomed him in. Zacchaeus is happy. I have a household. He's got a nice household. He's got a lot of money. He's done well for himself. And we talked about this last week about households, how they're not just a nuclear family, father, mother, 2 kids. This is a household. This is people that are staff, and this is people that are working for him and understand the inner workings of what a John Gotti would do. And all who had came began to grumble. Jesus has gone to be a guest at someone's house that they had expelled from the temple. Not just a sinner, but like the chief of sinners, might say. Someone who has been kicked out. Well, of course he's gone to his house. What other house is he going to go to? Because he didn't come to go with those who were in the crowd. He came to seek and save the lost. He came to be with the people that really were struggling to find a king, Zacchaeus knows who he is. He knows the wrongs he has committed. But Jesus doesn't let that stop him. Nor does Zacchaeus let that get in the way of having Jesus of Nazareth come over to his house. Again, we don't know exactly who is all there. It doesn't actually say, but it's not a bunch of good law-abiding citizens that are at this house. The people that are welcomed into the temple will not be at this house. The people that are expected to be in the presence of Jesus through the crowd will not be at this house. And Jesus just comes, and he comes over for dinner, and he brings his presence in to this place. Think Goodfellas, think The Godfather. This is where he sat down to have dinner. And all Zacchaeus could do was stand there. He stood there in amazement. Something had changed. Jesus had come to the house. Jesus had taken his time to go with him. In London, we have seen this place before. Have you heard of Speaker's Corner before? You go there and you're allowed to rant and rave all you want. It's like the olden days of Facebook rant and rave. You just get to go to the corner of wherever it is in Hyde Park. You can go and stand there, and you can go and you can say whatever you want, and people can come by and listen, or they can walk by, it doesn't matter, and you can preach your heart out. People tend to think this gets the message across. We don't know what Jesus said, but we can tell you that the reason he doesn't say what Jesus said, but he went into his house and he just brought his presence there. He didn't come to go and preach through a message. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But what he did is he brought his presence into his house. And he came and he ate with him. He didn't come to bring his soapbox. He came to be with those that are lost. This story isn't about a story about a sermon preached. It's about a space entered in for the presence of Jesus and somebody who needs him. He brought a message of hope, not through words, but through by being present with them. He was just there, not preaching. He doesn't tell him about his mission that he's there for. He enacts his mission because Jesus is salvation. And then as Zacchaeus stood there, he said, look, everybody, I have an announcement to make. I have decided, that I have a bit of money, and I'm going to give half of my money away to the poor. That's great. I'm going to give half of my money away to the poor. But you might know something else about me. I've kind of taken some money from people in the past as well. I've kind of made some profit. I'm going to take this and I'm going to give 4 times what I've taken from people and give it back to them. Jesus comes into his space. No message, no condemnation, but his presence. And the Spirit brings conviction and changes what needs to be changed. Jesus is there. He's just present. This is not Zacchaeus trying to earn salvation. You go back a chapter, and we have the rich young ruler. And the rich young ruler approaches Jesus and says, what can I do? And he says, take everything and sell it and get rid of everything. If you want to enter the kingdom, you have to get rid of everything, because he's asking how to earn salvation. This is Zacchaeus responding to the love of Jesus, and he just does. He just gives. He just gives naturally from what he has, and he says, this is what you can have. You can have this. Because Jesus in the chapter before is saying you cannot buy salvation. It is just something that you accept. And through that acceptance, everything changes. Just sitting with the king, everything changed in his heart, and he gave it all away. And then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. Today salvation has come to this house. Today this mob boss, the salvation has come. And this entire household is saved. We're talking all of the people that knew what was going on. All of the outsiders. They were all brought into the kingdom. And they weren't just brought into the kingdom. They are now considered sons of Abraham. They are now welcomed into the family. They are friends and family of Jesus. Everything changed. That is what the art of welcome is. Everything changes when the presence of Jesus comes into a conversation. I was at the library on Friday. That's where I like to work on. If I need to get stuff done, I'll go to the library. I sat down. Usually there's an area in the back of the downtown library in those glass window areas. I kind of sat down and I was on my own working away. And of course, when you're preparing a sermon, you like to practice these things or just think about these things and be like, how can I do these things? And this lady comes in. Her name's Nikki. And she comes in, sits down, and I say, hello. My name's Jordan. She's like, oh, hi, my name's Nikki. I was like, what are you up to? She's like, oh, I'm studying for an exam. She's had her degree in nursing from India, but she wants to be an RN here, so she's on her way to get her master's. I said, whoa. I said, that's interesting. So we talked a little bit about that. Then I said, and that sounds weird, but I'll put it, when's your exam? November 5th at 9 a.m. You can write that down if you want to. And I put it in my phone. I'm going to pray for her exam. And I thought that's a nice little conversation. She said, oh, my son's here, 2 years old or 1.5 years old. And then that was kind of the end of that conversation. Revival didn't break out. Don't worry, I'm not going to some amazing crescendo of a story. But about a half hour later, she comes back with her little 1.5-year-old son just to show me who he was. And she was very proud of him, and she was very proud she trusted me to bring him into here, and she told me his name, told me what his name meant universe, and I thought I couldn't quite understand the word that she said for the name that meant universe in it was in Hindu, and so then I was like, okay, I'm just going to reverse search it, and I said names that mean universe, and it was like 1,000 names that came up, so I'm like, well. But we had a nice little moment. Perhaps I could have preached a bit more. Perhaps I could have shared a little bit more. But what I really wanted to do is just open up a space for the presence of Jesus to be in that spot. And I know that sounds a little bit trite. That may sound like I'm walking away from a conversation. But if you know me, I don't walk away from too many conversations. But there's moments that you need to ask the Spirit, what do you need to do in this situation? Perhaps you need to say to somebody, hey, I go to church on Sunday. Do you want to join me? I had that moment last week in the gym where somebody was like, hey, talk about that. Be a little bit more forthright. But in this moment, I thought, you know what, let's just bring that piece there, and let's ask if we can pray. So I asked her, and I'm going to pray for her. So there's a few things about the art of welcome. This is from our website. Welcoming is the practice of receiving into our homes and lives the other. Welcoming is an extension of gathering wherein we open our hearts in vulnerability to one another. Welcoming is a disruptive practice. People who are welcoming insert themselves into fear, contempt, and dissonance, providing spaces of peace and hospitality. Instead of elevating hospitality, the practice of welcome disrupts the tide of anger with grace. So a few different things. When we practice the art of welcome, we open up our hearts in vulnerability to one another. Zacchaeus brought Jesus into his house, but Zacchaeus brought Jesus into a place where he knew it wasn't the same type of people that he would have wanted to be with, but he opened him up and he was vulnerable. And then Jesus came into his space and he made himself vulnerable. When we want to bring the peace of Jesus into somebody's life, we need to be vulnerable. The art of welcome is a disruptive practice. We insert ourselves into fear, contempt, and dissonance, providing spaces of peace and hospitality. We insert ourselves into someone's fear. When somebody is anxious, when somebody is going through a stressful time, we insert ourselves into that, not to solve their problem, but to bring the peace of Jesus into that issue. If you're a teacher at a school, you insert yourself into the presence of that community of kids, and you just bring the peace of Jesus in that moment. Because you can't always preach, but you just bring peace. And we sit with people where they are at, not where we want them to be. That's such a big thing. There's so many places, there's so many people I want them to be where they need to be. As a Enneagram 8, I have this desire to have people be somewhere, be more than they are, be what their potential is. And I know and I can see potential in people, and it's hard for me to slow down, but I just need to slow down and let people find that peace and that salvation in their rhythm and their time, because Jesus wants it more than we could ever. Jesus was homeless. He didn't have a home to welcome people into. He didn't have a place that he could be hospitable, but he was the most hospitable in the places that he was at, in the spaces that he was at. He was hospitable because he brought his presence and he brought his love. That is a challenge that we can have, is that we can bring salvation through peace into conversations. I don't miss it enough to change my travel ways, but I miss taking the bus. Does anybody take the bus here? Oh, man. We are. There you go, Catherine. Bring the peace of Jesus into the bus. I loved being on the bus when I was a kid. I'd just be there, open up the Bible, allow people. You get on the same bus route as the same people over and over and over and over again, and you have a half hour just to sit there and perhaps have conversation with them. In a public space, bring the peace of Jesus. Again, Luke 19:10, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost. Gina, if you want to come up here, we're going to end there. Jesus is on a rescue mission. He's on a rescue mission of his presence. We have this wonderful story. This is Jesus just about time to go in to Jerusalem. And he rides in on a donkey and he goes through all that he went through for us. Crucified and killed. And 3 days later, he rises again. And after he rises again, he appears to people. He appears to people throughout the land, and he brings his presence. And there's a moment in the road to Emmaus. Jesus walks. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but on the same day, two of them were going. This is just after the resurrection of Jesus. On the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all the things that had happened. And while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. He walked with them. Jonathan. Yeah. Thank you. He walked with them. And he spent time. He just listened and he said and he talked a little bit and he just spent time with them. Allowing presence just to be with him. And as they came near to the village which they were going to, he walked ahead of them as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us. It's almost evening." So he went and he stayed with them. And he took bread and he broke it and he gave it to them. And then their eyes were opened. They recognized him, and then he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us?" While he was talking to us on the road. While he was opening scriptures to us. That is our prayer, that the peace of God walks with us when we walk with people. And then when we break bread together, when we eat together with people, when we are in their presence, when we are equal with them and we eat together, God's presence will be revealed. So how do we practice the art of welcome? We invite the presence of Jesus to be in every conversation that we're having. In every place that we go, we invite the presence of God to be with us. You see that beautiful example when they broke bread. Their hearts were opened and they understood everything that he was saying. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this space. Thank you for your presence. I pray that this place would be known as a place of your presence, but outside of these walls, wherever we go, your presence would be known as well. We thank you for your love.